I've been in the CrossFit space for a long time. I've been practicing the sport since 2013, have written hundreds of blog posts and made several videos about the CrossFit methodology specifically, and I think I've read every scientific paper that has the word CrossFit or high-intensity functional fitness in it. So it's safe to say that I care deeply about CrossFit as a sport, but also as a methodology. And as sport scientists, we're always thinking about how is it possible that some people, some specific people, really like to do sports and are very active and also healthy? And why is another cohort of the society just completely not interested in sport and just is much more prone to chronic diseases and so on? And I think here CrossFit really nailed it because they pushed forward this idea of community, working out together with your friends, suffering through hard workouts that gives you some kind of bonding with your friends and that wants you always to come back to the sport. So I think the community is extremely important in any sport, but specifically in CrossFit. And that's why for the first time in 11 years, despite everything that has been happening in CrossFit throughout the years, I am getting a bit worried because the CrossFit community is kind of splitting in two. There is some kind of division going on. And that is why I'm getting worried specifically about CrossFit as a sport and the obvious repercussions this has on the CrossFit affiliates and also the community. So let's go through an interesting thought experiment that was put forward by Craig Ritchie in his latest CrossFit news video. I would highly suggest watching that video. I think it's a really good one.
Here's a thought that's just come into my mind. Say if CrossFit just disappeared tomorrow, okay? The organization, the games, the open, blah, blah, blah. Would there still be a community? 100%. Like, the CrossFit gyms would just be functional fitness gyms and still have the same amazing people in them. You know, all those local competitions, the grassroots ones that we see all around that bring people together, and they would still exist. And that's honestly like the beating heart of the competitive CrossFit community, you know? We have the Dubai Fitness Championships going on right now. That's not a CrossFit sanctioned event, that's just a functional fitness event with a lot of the big CrossFit athletes at crushing workouts.
So indeed, let's think that CrossFit as an organization does not organize any competitions anymore. No open, no games, no semifinals, nothing. The methodology per se definitely won't die off, I think. I agree with Craig here. But think about it. The competitions that we will have then will be some kind of decentralized stew of fitness competitions, of smaller competitions such as throwdowns, maybe the Rogue Invitational, maybe the Wodapalooza, and so on. Imagine being an athlete in this world, because you always have to, or I think it's sometimes useful if you think about the sport, to also look at things through the eyes of an athlete. You can go to those smaller events, right? The whatever, Dutch Throwdown, you can go to Wodapalooza and rake up some prize money. But there's one key thing lacking, and that is structure. And I firmly believe that during the glory days of CrossFit, Froning, Matt Fraser, Annie Torresdottir, and all those amazing athletes, one of the things that the community had at that point was a feeling of structure. You had the Open, you had the regionals, and then you had the games. Could be said to even expand that season even more. I will get into that later in the video. But still, there was some kind of structure. Everyone prepared for the Open. Then the big games were the regionals. And then if you are really elite, you made it to the games. And I feel, also with the new changes that as CrossFit HQ has made to the season, that this structure is really lacking. And a sport without a structure has problems long term. Think about, let's say, the UCI, the Union Cycliste Internationale. They are the governing body of cycling. And they all of a sudden would decide that there's no professional cycling anymore. There's no competitions, there's no Tour de France, there's no Paris-Roubaix, there's no Tour de Flanders, there's nothing anymore. I also think that cycling as a sport would not die off, right? Like people would still go out riding with their friends. But the vibe, the interest, the innovation of big teams, of big money, of sponsors would obviously go away. And I'm afraid that if the structure keeps lacking on long term in CrossFit, this would also happen to the sport of CrossFit. It doesn't mean that the methodology would die off, but maybe the innovation would be less and less, and obviously less money would be poured into big competitions. I mean, yesterday I was looking for 3 hours, no joke, for an interesting paper about CrossFit, the methodology, or anything about CrossFit that I thought was worth sharing with you guys, with the public. And I basically found not one paper in the last, let's say, 2 years that has sufficiently high methodological validity in order for me to be able to share it with you. I think that's really problematic, because if you want to evolve as a sport, you obviously also need good science in the sport. Think about cycling. I mean, how much good science there is in cycling. Material, biomechanics, physiology, and so on and so forth. In CrossFit, it is the best sport in the world to do cool research on. I mean, it is the epitome of physical fitness. It is a combination of strength, endurance, skill, everything that is interesting for sports science. But still, the innovation of universities is lacking, because I think many of the professors and the whole scientific world just thinks that CrossFit is some kind of fitness program and there's no structured sport. So the question obviously is, okay, so how can we improve this? What could be some good ways? And my proposal simply is that CrossFit can become some kind of UCI, Union Cycliste Internationale, where they are the governing body over several competitions, not only the Open and whatever the games that they host themselves, but also other competitions that are organized by smaller private companies. For example, the ASO is a company that organizes the Tour de France as well as Paris-Roubaix, I think, and the Tour of Flanders in cycling. And it's simply the UCI who governs all of the different competitions and also the World Championships and so on. And I think a role like that could be perfect for CrossFit. Think about how well HYROX is doing this. They just have several competitions that are listed in the beginning of the year, and then with the World Championships at the end of the year, in this case June, where different athletes and different disciplines can qualify for. Why can't we have 8, 9, 10 competitions throughout the season where athletes can go to rake up points, and the ones with sufficient amount of points can go to the games later that year, or at least in the summer? It seems to be quite logical. Every other sport in the world does it like this, and that's why also the general public who's not into the sport just says, okay, that's a sport. That makes complete sense. And I am aware that other governing bodies are trying to do this, like the functional fitness federations and so on, and I really applaud that. I hope that this develops further, because if you want to create good athletes, innovation, and sponsor money in the sport, you need to have more structure. I'm very interested in how you think about that. Are you also in some kind of moral limbo? That's how Craig Ritchie explained this, or expressed this in his latest video on, okay, I love CrossFit as a methodology. I will keep doing CrossFit until the end of days, but I'm not standing behind CrossFit HQ, and potentially I don't want to participate in the Open. Okay, but in that way, you're also obviously extracting money from the company and actually giving them less power to maybe organize cool competitions and do the right thing for the sport. I don't know the answer. I'm just a guy on the internet, but I'm very interested in learning how you think about this. Just a quick note, I am now almost through all the analysis of our Zone 2 project, our training study that we did last couple of months. And I'm very excited to show you this next week in a video which will be dropping Tuesday or Monday. So keep an eye peeled for that. All right, see you in the next one. Ciao.